Directives are an awesome but often misunderstood feature of Angular. In this lecture, we'll find out more about how directives work, and we'll start the process of converting our classified cards into their own directive. Thinking back to earlier in the course when we talked about directives very briefly, we covered how directives are markers on HTML elements. And these markers most commonly will be either the element name itself or maybe an attribute on an element. And really, we've been using directives this whole time. Everything that we see here that is maybe an MD content tag or MD card, these are all directives. These are directives provided by Angular material. And although these are provided by a third-party library, there's no reason that we can't create our own directives. And so what we'll aim to do in this section is take all of this stuff that we've got here, everything from MD content here, all the way down to where that tag closes up. We'll take this and we'll wrap it up into a directive. And the goal will be to get a reusable component that we can just drop in anywhere we like in our application. So instead of having to repeat all of this content within our MD content card, it would look something more like this. We would have maybe a classified card. And that classified card element will give us everything that we have within this MD content section, but instead we're just using a simple tag like this. So in the previous example, we really just skimmed the surface of directives. So let's dive a little bit deeper before we move on. And for that, let's use JSBin here. We'll just do a simple little Angular app to show us how directives work. And let's add in Angular. So we can do add library. We'll look for Angular 1.4.0 stable. And then let's just quickly set up our app. We'll do ng-app is equal to app. And let's say var app is equal to angular.module. And we'll just call this app. And we want our empty array there. All right, then let's maybe just set up a quick controller. So app controller, and we'll call this my controller. Then we want our function with scope. And then we'll just maybe make a message here. We'll say scope my message is equal to hello. All right, so let's bring this in now to the template. What we do here is we can just put ng controller on the body tag, and that points to my controller. And then within here, we can maybe put an h1, and of course, we can just template out our message. So my message goes here. All right, so that's all really familiar. We've seen this before, but what if we wanted to wrap this up into its own directive so that we had something perhaps like hello message and make it into its own element instead of having to template it out like we do here? And for simple examples like this, obviously it's not too burdensome to template it out directly like this, but once we get into situations where we have a lot of content, like our MD content here, well then it makes sense to kind of abstract it away into its own directive. All right, so let's set up a directive for this hello message. So we can do app directive, and we'll call it hello message. And so just a quick note here about the casing. If we remember, we have to do camel case in our directive names here, and then it gets normalized into kebab case over here. All right, so the second argument is a function, and then we need to return an object. And this is going to be the directive definition object, or DDO. And at a minimum, we need a template. So template, and then we want an h1. And then within here, we can template out our message. So we'll say my message. And you can already see it coming through. And so what we've got now is the parent controller is passing through this hello message to this directive. And instead of having it come through being templated out directly here, we're getting it through this element. All right, so now what if we wanted to maybe repeat this? So we could copy this, and we'll just paste it down here. And so now it's showing up twice. But what if we got into the situation where we maybe wanted a different message? So we had something like scope, and this is my other message, and it says, hey there. So now, what if we wanted to use the same directive, but we wanted to have a different message show up? Well, the way that it works right now is we've kind of got to use one or the other. We can either use my message or my other message, and really it's going to affect every single instance of this directive. But we've got a way to kind of customize this. And the way to do that is to isolate the scope of it and then bind from the controller to the directive. So I'll show you what I mean here. What we can do is we can say scope and then and make that an object. And what this does is it isolates the scope of our directive from the outside world. And so now this directive can't talk to the outside world. However, we can pass certain things in by specifying what we want to allow. So in our case, we want to allow a message to come in, and we want a message perhaps to come in through an attribute. We want to say maybe on our element here that we want a message attribute, and we want to point to this one, in this case, to our my message. And then maybe over here, we want to point message to my other message. And so the goal now is to have these messages passed into our elements and then be picked up over here in our directive and be templated out. And so the way that we can do that is we can specify on scope that we want a key called message to point to message coming in from our elements. And so now if we come down here, we just have to say message. And here you can see we've got hello for the first one and hey there for the second one. And this equal sign here is one of a few variations that are available for directives. And in particular, it means that we want to have two-way binding between our directive and the parent controller that is using it. We've got other symbols that we use too. We've got the @ symbol for attribute string binding, or we've got the ampersand for callback method binding. But in this case, we're passing in some data from an attribute, so we want to have the equal sign. And also just a quick tip, because we've got the same name for our key and what it's pointing to from our element, we can just get rid of this and leave the equal sign, and it works out to be the same. All right, so there's a quick example of how we can isolate our directives from the outside world, but still pass in data that we want to them. In the next video, we'll get to work on converting our content here into a classified card directive.